Welcome to Round 9 coverage of Grand Prix Memphis. I'm Brian David Marshall, joined in the booth by Pro Tour champion Jacob Van Lunen, and along with us, chiming in occasionally, Rich Hagon.
Ding dong.
And here we are watching Mike Malone, white-green aggro. This is something we talked about. Mike Malone, by the way, started this tournament 0-2.
Ooh.
Started this tournament 0-2, has rattled off 6 straight wins. He's just like, the deck wasn't quite firing. Things weren't quite working out for me. But things have been going smoothly for him ever since, and now here he is, turn 2 with a servo exhibition, making, 2 servos.
Does that make him a servo exhibitionist?
It does.
Huh.
Yeah, and that's really nice to have that on turn 2 when your opponent leaves 2 open mana there.
By the way, another card that's been just one of the breakout cards of this tournament has been Jade Light Ranger. Seeing a lot of that card, and here we see, gonna explore, I don't want that Merfolk Branchwalker, and then he's going to draw a land. So this card, has been compared to, apparently by Luis, Tarmogoyf and Muldrifter.
Yeah, it's a Tarmogoyf and Muldrifter split card.
So, by the way, there's a Jade Light Ranger on the other side of the table. These two decks actually have a number of cards in common. We also saw the Merfolk Branchwalker. It's limited all-stars here in Standard with Ravenous Chupacabra taking down the Jade Light Ranger and clearing the path for Cesar Soto's 3-2 Jade Light Ranger. We saw SRAM's Expertise on top. Was that the card that Michael Malone had shown?
Yes, and that card's going to be really good here because it allows Michael to cast 2 spells on a single turn. It's going to make his board really big, and it potentially will set him up to cast a card like Appeal to Authority, which can just win the game completely out of nowhere here. It's important to note that Cesar's deck, while it produces a lot of power and has really big creatures, which usually matches up well against slightly smaller guys, those creatures can easily just be tapped down, and then Michael can force through a huge attack here.
So here we see the SRAM's Expertise, and this is just the most value you can get. He's like, okay, I'm going to put 3 servers into play. I'm going to play a Merfolk Branchwalker for free, and I'm going to draw a land off of it.
Yeah.
And now, because this is so much about getting as many creatures on the board as possible, Michael Malone has no incentive to block here.
Oh, hello.
And there is the Scarab God.
Yeah, and Cesar correctly identifies what Michael Malone's deck is trying to do and realizes that it's unlikely that he's going to have more than, say, 1 or 2 copies of a card like Cast Down in his main deck, if he has any at all. And I don't think he does, because his deck is trying to do something very focused.
He has... The only card he has in his main deck that is at all interactive with what his opponent's trying to do is Blossoming Defense.
Yeah, so the Scarab God, that's going to be there, and...
Well, here it comes, everybody. And Cesar's at 20. He's going to take 5 here. I mean, Blossoming Defense would have, not done anything there. Here's 5th land. Plays in a Danto's Vanguard. Another card that 2 of them. Another card that, by the way, every time we've seen this card this weekend, it's been doing some really impressive work.
Yeah, the card has been incredible. I basically have been thinking of it as True Name Nemesis for 2 mana.
Oh boy! Well, look at this value though from Cesar Soto. He is reanimating a Jade Light Ranger out of Michael Malone's graveyard with the Scarab God. He explores twice. Gets 2 counters. So remember, that's a 4/4 creature right now that gets 2 counters, so it's a 6/6.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive body.
Plus, I'm going to scry. Plus, I'm going to ding you for 1.
And Cesar Soto, that Scarab God is really powerful in his deck. He has a lot of Enter the Battlefield triggers that he can get off of reanimating creatures. And obviously, it's just one of the best cards you could possibly play with in this format, but in his deck, it's particularly strong.
Yeah, these two aren't mucking around, are they? I mean, all of these are really quite powerful plays. This is good stuff.
I think that was a glint sleeve siphoner that he played there, based on the fact that he ticked his energy up, but I can't quite see it. Thank you.
Do you feel like super powerful now? You say words and Cesar Soto's hands move mystically.
Fingers to temple. So Cesar is seeing if he should start attacking here. And so how does appeal to authority work? If I mean, I assume that's the card Michael Malone is looking for at this point.
So appeal to authority, you can use it to tap down your opponent's creatures, and then you also can use it to give a creature +X, where X is equal to the number of creatures you control. And at this point, Cesar has enough creatures untapped that the authority half of appeal to authority will not give Michael Malone a clear path. But the thing about appeal is that it also gives your creature trample.
Yeah.
So if Michael Malone can get enough toughness off of Cesar's side of the board, then the appeal to authority could just kill Cesar completely out of nowhere.
All right, you see him cycling there. Cycles the land looking for something. There's... What does he have? Is that another...
That's an Adorned Pouncer.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
promo one, yeah.
So Adorned Pouncer, and then, yeah, I mean, Michael Malone is just hoping he can stay alive and find an appeal to authority to win.
Yeah, and, you know...
Does he have any... Oh, I guess he also can, like, maybe, if he has enough lands, can also do, like, Shafet Dunes and appeal to authority, and...
Yeah, just tons and tons and tons of damage. The Adorned Pouncer, that actually means that appeal to authority would be lethal here.
Oh, right, double
Previous
strike.
to that, you know, he had a lot of power on the board, but it wasn't quite enough to power through lethal if he had that that key card from his deck. But now that he has access to double strike, that changes everything.
But, you know, we talked about this becoming a token format, and Cesar Soto is putting the much bigger tokens into play, and that's not going to stop anytime soon.
Scarab God is a very powerful card.
So you see Cesar got to draw a card with his Glint Sleeve Siphoner, gets to scry, gets to, you know, so he's really manipulating his deck and tearing through it here. This Sultai Midrange deck.
Some really interesting cards in Cesar's deck, too. I really like that he has access to a pair of Essence Scatter in his main deck. I think
Nice.
that provides an angle for the Sultai deck that is really rare to see. And he is not playing, you know, the Winding Constrictor side of those cards. He is instead just playing basically all the most powerful cards in this color combination. And I really like that setup a lot.
And it's really largely a green-black deck that's splashing a little bit of blue, mostly for Scarab God and for the Essence Scatter.
Yeah, that's true. And post-sideboard, he gets a lot of help, too.
It's Ravenous time again.
Oh, another Ravenous Chupacabra there. And it managed to kill an Adanto Vanguard because, well, he wasn't going to be able to pay 4 life there to make it indestructible. So can Michael Malone find a way out of this ever-growing board from Cesar Soto?
And this is one of those things about the standard format is you get to these stages of the game where, you know, the top of your library might be fighting against the top of your opponent's library and a Scarab God, and that's never the position you want to be in.
Yeah, multiple Ravenous Chupacabras. We've seen it as a one-of in a couple decks, but there's 3 in this deck, so he's able to, you know, get those creatures into combat and have them die. He also gets to get tremendous value off of them with this Scarab God.
Yeah, with the Scarab God, they come back as 4/4s that kill any
Here
creature.
comes another Jade Light Ranger. It's just crazy. So again, that's a 4/4. So he's going to explore. All right, draw a card. Oh, there's a Vraska's Contempt on top of my library. and what's crazy about this is you get to do that explore during your upkeep, because that's where he's using this. So you also will get to draw that card.
Yeah, so now he was able to draw an untapped land so that he could leave open Vraska's Contempt and draw Vraska's Contempt if he so desired.
I think he desired to do that because now if he's seen that, you know, this is a deck that came out of one of the classics a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if he's aware of this deck, then he knows that he just kind of want to sit on that Vraska's Contempt for something like Appeal to Authority.
Yeah, and I mean, if Michael Malone has the combination of Appeal to Authority with Blossoming Defense, That could be great, but that's really what he needs. But
but
it looks like...
Yeah, that's going to be the game.
Yeah.
So Cesar Soto takes game 1 with Sultai midrange here. Mike Malone having a good time. He hasn't lost since round 2 yesterday. He's like, all right, I can scrap back here.
Well, if you are just joining us, you're very welcome. You're watching Good Morning Magic with me, Rich Hagan, our play-by-play Meister, Mr. Brian David Marshall, and our resident in-the-booth expert, Jacob Van Lunen. Later on today, you'll see MTG Red Zone with Marshall Sutcliffe and Reed Duke leading the way. And, of course, we'll have the top 8. For those of you wondering, why are we showing a 6 and 2? There must be some 7-1 decks out there. And, of course, we've got 7, 8 and 0 players. That's absolutely true. But here on Good Morning Magic, we want to focus, just for the first couple of rounds of Sunday, on some of the quirkier aspects of the format, whether that's modern or standard or legacy. Whenever we've got a constructed GP, we like to show you some fun and interesting decks. So in this round, for example, we're focusing in on Michael Malone in our first match. Later, we'll show you the Abzan Hour deck of Chris Botelho. And next round, just to mark your card, we have both a Masterminds Acquisition ramp deck, yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful, and Blue-Red Artificers, which I can't wait to see. God, that's our sort of schedule, our 4 big decks here on the second morning of Grand Prix Memphis. But Brian and JVL, let's talk a bit more about Michael Malone's deck.
So this deck can go really wide, really fast. One of the really nice additions here is Jungle-Born Pioneer, because it creates a token with hexproof. And that means that you can cast Appeal without having to worry about your opponent having a spot removal spell. So even if they have open mana, you don't have to worry about the creature getting killed when you try to pump it up and make it absolutely ginormous.
So you actually have a lot of resilience here, because we talked about the Adanto Vanguard. So if you do that with Appeal to Authority, you can make it indestructible. You have the hexproof token, and you also have 2 copies of Blossoming Defense.
Yeah, and I think you actually might even have a third one hiding there
there's
alongside some
there's
Legion's
a third one,
Lands.
yeah.
over there.
Man, you never see the third one coming.
Yeah.
That's true.
But again, we talked about tokens like Legion's Landing, even the Adorned Pouncer, that's a 2-for-1 in terms of being able to, embalm it and bring it back. That's Eternalize. Servo Exhibition, Shram's Expertise, Jungleborn Pioneer, getting multiple cards off of Jadelight Ranger and Merfolk Branchwalker, just all 2-for-1s.
Yeah, that's the thing is removal spells do not interact favorably with this deck. And when you're playing against a creature deck, you're really leaning on your removal spells in order to do well. And if you want to contend with this deck, that's not how you beat them. You need to beat them by playing bigger bodies and by having the right card for the turn that they're going to try to go off. And just this round, we watched Cesar Soto. He was able to, enact that plan very well. He played bigger bodies. He didn't try to use removal spells. He didn't try to just kill something on each of his turns. That would not have worked for him. Instead, he just had really good creatures and was able to be too large for Michael Malone to chip in damage before sending in for a lethal blow.
It doesn't seem like Cesar's deck should have looked as good as it does against this deck.
Is that just because it felt like once we got to the Scarab God, he was actually playing with Michael Malone's deck?
Yeah, yes.
Right? I mean, it wasn't just Cesar Soto's deck that he used to win.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to what part of each of their decks they end up drawing. Cesar Soto plays a lot of spot removal. He plays counter magic, and those cards do not match up well against Michael Malone, but those aren't the cards he drew. He drew Ravenous Chupacabras. Those are great. He drew, Jade Light Rangers that, hit the correct number of lands and non-lands.
Jake, is he likely, Cesar, is he likely to take out his Essence Scatters after game 1 because he's going to be on the draw, and it feels like keeping up Essence Scatter mana after turn 2 just feels like super behind, at which point there's already multiple creatures in play for Malone, possibly?
I imagine so. I think Cesar realizes that he wants to be tapping all of his mana on each of his turns, and that's going to significantly decrease the value of a counterspell like Essence Scatter. The other thing is that he realizes he's not playing against a deck that has either the Scarab God and or Hazaret, and Essence Scatter is really an answer for those 2 cards more than anything else.
Late night?
He's
just trying to
sorry about that.
do this. Now, here's game 2.
He's Batman the musical auditions.
Oh my god. But you'd be Robin, wouldn't you? I mean,
Maybe.
You're a Robin, not a Batman.
I was probably just screaming at the TV when I saw Joel Embiid's Dirk fade away last night.
Okay.
That's actually a thing that happened.
Is that is that a popular sporting cultural reference?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Joe Lembid, whoever he is.
That sounds like a magic creature.
Right.
All right, so Danto Vanguard gets on the board for Michael Malone, and Cesar Soto, who mulliganed, has to pass the turn with no second land.
Yeah, and this does not look good for Cesar at this point.
And
he's going to need to find multiple lands in a row if he wants to even stay in this game.
But on the plus side, we get to see Michael Malone's deck do its thing, potentially. And its thing is quite disgusting.
So here we see he explores away a servo exhibition and then draws a land with his Jade Light Ranger, so that's a 3-2. So he's got 6 points of power attacking on his turn 4. And it looks like, oh no, we're going to discard Vraska for Cesar Soto.
Cesar in his hand has a card that's particularly strong in this matchup, Walking Ballista.
Oh yeah, that card is fantastic against Michael Malone's deck. Again, he also doesn't have a ton of ways to interact with it. What did Michael Malone maybe get after sideboarding?
Whoa! He just casts SRAM's expertise into a Jade Light Ranger? That's disgusting.
And then and he hit 2 lands off the Jade Light Ranger.
So let's play game 3, shall we?
That was cool. I hope we've got decks stacked up further than just 2 matches in the feature match area this round. Things are going very quickly.
Yeah, don't you worry, boys and girls. We have decks for days coming up because we'll be watching Chris Botelho against Hal Brady. Botelho's the deck we're going to be featuring after the conclusion of this match. That's his Abzan Ramp Hour deck.
Where did Chris Botelho end up yesterday?
He's 6-2 as well.
He's 6-2 as well. Okay.
And one of the reasons we show 6 and 2s in round 9 is that if they lose round 9, well, then they're out of contention for the top 8 realistically. But the 7 and 1s, well, they can keep for a round because even if they happen to lose their first round at 7 and 2, they can still make the top 8. And we do want to show you not just the fun decks, but also decks that can still win the tournament.
Right. Decks that are 7 and 1 that are still doing well. By the way, we saw Jack Kiefer's Vampire Horse Tribal deck was still going.
So now is that the same or very similar to Sam Black's because he's blue, white, black, vampire-y thing, right? Are they just about the same?
Sam Black is playing a deck that is really very different. It's actually kind of a white weenie deck that somehow wants to have either a Snubhorn Sentry or a Skymarch Aspirant in play on turn 1, and then basically kill his opponent on turn 4, right? You watched a lot of his matches yesterday.
Yeah, I was following him around the room because his deck looked really, really, really interesting. Sam's deck is way different. Sam's deck is trying to kill people on turn 4. It is the most aggressive deck I've seen in the standard format, and that includes the red decks. So,
yeah, when we were walking to dinner last night, you would catch snippets of conversation from different players who were all trying to understand Sam's deck.
Right?
They're like, well, I don't think he drew Anointed Procession against me, so I don't really know. And it's like, no, he's not playing that card. And people are like, Snubhorn Sentry, and sneering a little bit.
Right.
Like the Snubhorns are like, well, why do you want an 0-3 and a 2-1 in the same deck? And as you walked, it was certainly the deck that had gotten a lot of people's attention. But our attention right now turns back to this match. We're underway for Game 3 here between White Green Aggro and Sultai Midrange, and there is a Servant of the Conduit for Cesar Soto. He's got access to all the mana he could possibly need. And this is a very slow start for Michael Malone. Again, this is a deck that wants to go wide. And a Walking Ballista on the board for Cesar Soto with 2 counters on it. It's going to be very difficult for Michael Malone here as he cycles the land looking for an answer.
yeah, on the draw, not having a single play until the 3rd turn does not look great for Michael Malone. And it's almost as if he's behind 2 turns here because Cesar has that Servant of the Conduit, and that gives him access to 4 mana on turn 3 and 5 on turn 4, and 5 mana happens to be the number of mana that you need to cast Scarab God.
And, if Michael Malone plays a Jade Light Ranger here, how does that work out for him?
So the Explore trigger goes on the stack, and
Hell, that's what we're going to see.
Cesar can use a Walking Ballista activation to kill it before it gets any +1/+1 counters.
How do you feel about that? Merfolk Branchwalker, Michael Malone, it's going to be the same thing. Well, he's like, I actually kind of like it. He keeps it on top.
Huh.
That's really interesting. That tells me that he definitely has a land already for the next turn. Perhaps he has a land and another 2 that he had drawn recently.
Well, there's another Walking Ballista.
Okay, that feels like the end.
Yeah, and then somehow we've made it this far without Rich making a single Walking in Memphis reference.
Nope.
This is really impressive.
No.
All right, here's
that
Shram's
yesterday.
expertise. Puts Merfolk Branchwalker into play. Merfolk Branchwalker is going to get shot by a Ballista with the trigger on the stack again. There you see a land. And, okay, Michael Malone is trying to muster something here.
It's actually not that unreasonable. Like, his board cannot be dealt with these Walking Ballistas, despite him doing very little in the early turns of the game. It just shows you how much SRAM's expertise adds to the table in one turn.
Can Cesar not just spend his 4 mana and put counters on and just go, oh, okay, I've got an endless supply of machine gunnery?
Oh, he absolutely can. I'm just pointing out that it would require Cesar's whole turn and would,
Right, okay.
you know.
Okay. It's not like 3/1/1s are suddenly, like, earth-shatteringly great.
No, but Michael Malone gets to keep some permanents on the board that aren't lands.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
For now.
Upside.
Yes.
Okay, see, you're being very optimistic for a Sunday morning.
I had coffee.
Fair.
You're welcome.
I was told there would be mugs for Good Morning Magic, by the way.
Yeah, there will be. I'm still saving up.
There's a servo exhibition. But, yeah, I mean, you're right, Rich. I mean, Cesar's just able to, put a counter on one, pick one of these off, and just play that game here. All right. Oh, well, here's an appeal to authority. So Cesar is going to pay 4 in response to put a second counter on the Walking Ballista. And here's Blossoming Defense to protect it.
But
Fatal Push.
have you got another Blossoming Defense? No.
Yeah, that was a really nice stack we had there. What's crazy is that even if Michael Malone had another Blossoming Defense in that spot, it would have just gotten one of the Walking Ballistas off the table. That's all it would have done.
I think that's all Michael Malone was aiming for, was to start getting one of those things dealt with. He does have Naturalize in his sideboard. I wonder if he would have... Oh, no, he doesn't have that. That's Cesar. What does Michael Malone have in his sideboard? Fragmentize.
It's hard, though, because you really want that against a deck that you have a lot of targets, and when you're targeting something like a Walking Ballista with artifact removal, it's already getting the opponent some type of advantage.
All right, so here we see Walking Ballista has gotten a second counter and is attacking. And
So counter off 1. That means you're now too small to kill my other one.
yeah. But one Walking Ballista down.
And that was really nice from Cesar there. You saw the interaction there when Malone went for the double block. He chose the double block instead of triple blocking. So Cesar took advantage of that by using the one counter off the other Walking Ballista.
Well, he had 2 of them when he attacked. He couldn't triple block.
Oh, yeah, the other 2 were tapped. That's right.
No, but suddenly we may have found an interactive spell here from Michael Malone out of the sideboard. His one of Settle the Wreckage.
Ew.
Wow. It's not going to do a ton here, unfortunately for him.
Well, here it is. Settle the Wreckage for
Yes.
your Servant of the Conduit and your Walking Ballista. So it also kills both of Michael Malone's servos.
Yeah, Michael Malone down to 1 card in hand.
Yeah. Cesar, if you're wondering, he only gets 1 land because the Walking Ballista was gone by the time the settle resolved. So Jade Light Ranger. It's a nice way for him to start trying to climb his way back in here. There's Blossoming Defense. He doesn't want that. Draws a land. We know that Cesar is holding a Ravenous Chupacabra that has been looking for something other than a servo to kill for turns here. And a glint sleeve siphoner, which is so hard to say.
Yeah, they put a lot of weird sounds in that card's name. Cesar about to draw 2 cards on his turn, thanks to that glint sleeve siphoner.
Yeah, very nice. Well done.
I mean, with Malone down to so few cards, it's basically a nail in the coffin, if you will.
So sort of Dark Confidant-like card here in Standard.
Yeah. I think of it as roguelike.
And Cesar has some really nice top end in the form of Vraska and the Scarab God.
Oh, you see a Death Gorge Shaman that he brought in out of his Scavenger that he brought in out of his sideboard. Possibly just looking for cheaper things to get on the board to interact with Michael, not necessarily for its ability so much.
Yeah, I think that Cesar was probably expecting a card like Resilient Kenra out of Malone. That's a card that's really common to see out of these green-white aggro decks, and probably thought to himself, oh, okay, well, I'm going to have to trade with those. I can then get them out of the graveyard, and it obviously also interacts well with Adorned Pouncer.
So SRAM's expertise, but no spell to play for free off of it.
Yeah, it needs more Settle the Wreckage. That's the trouble. It's been and gone.
All right, well, Appeal to Authority gets Death Gorge scavenged away.
And offering up some trades here, Cesar correctly recognizes that if he can keep Michael Malone on defense, that it's going to be very, very difficult for Malone to ever get back into the game. Malone wants to run his opponent over. He wants to be the aggressor. And if he's blocking, he's not in a winning position.
So he puts 2 tokens in front of the Merfolk Branchwalker. I don't know. I'm wondering if I would have been interested in killing the glint sleeve there.
Yeah, the problem with killing the glint sleeve is that I think it has you dead the following turn, but I think you might have to do it anyway. Just hope you draw well on your turn.
Isn't he just... Right. No, he goes to 1 here, but it doesn't matter. There's the Vraska's Contempt. And Cesar Soto, sort of a little bit of an anticlimactic games 2 and 3 there. Walking Ballista looked fantastic there.
Yes,
card
it did.
you saw, you identified, you're looking at the list, Jake, so good call by you. You're like, oh, Walking Ballista seems like it's really good against all these servo exhibitions.
And lo and behold, it was. Welcome along to Good Morning Magic. As you can see, they've moved the GP much closer to us. So actually, table
lovely.
1 is just over our shoulder. So as the day progresses, I think you'll probably see some familiar faces over our shoulder. Anyway, we're watching Good Morning Magic with Rich, BDM and JVL. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, it'll be time to take a look at Chris Botelho, who has some form, BDM, when it comes to doing unusual things in deck building.
Yeah, absolutely.
Historically.
This is our catback player.
All right. We'll take a look at that after this short break.
first double event of the year, Grand Prix Seattle, Standard and Legacy. For this one, we got some sweet shots of things that you get to do around the city while you're there. Let's check them out. Welcome to Seattle, the home of Magic the Gathering and the home of our first double GP this year in April. We're here to give you a look at some of the cool things you can do in town, starting with the Space Needle. Built in 1962 for the World's Fair, it is 600 feet tall and is built to withstand earthquakes, massive winds, and has 25 lightning rods. Because with a building this big, you really want to be sure. Before the elevators were installed, workers commuted to work in a metal bucket. That's absolutely ridiculous. The views are amazing. You can see all of downtown, you can see Mount Rainier and like Elliott Bay and everything, and it actually is, even on what's like kind of a little bit of a foggy day, you can still see everything. It's actually awesome. Major part of the Space Needle is that the entire thing is filled with the intoxicating smell of caramel popcorn, which like I had to get a bag. I didn't remember doing it. I was just drawn in by it and I had to get it. Oh, it's so good. It's actually really good. Yeah. Come to the world's first ever Starbucks and try their special Pike Place roast. This is Pike Place Market, the #1 tourist attraction in Seattle. It's over 100 years old and is easily the best place in the state to see a fish get hurled 3 feet in the air. This is just a stone's throw from the Space Needle and is the Globe Fountain. It's this awesome water show fountain that plays music 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's really cool because it's all lit up at night. This is the Artist Playground at the Seattle Center, which is kind of just a playground by day, but it's also a bunch of musical instruments. The swings have wind chimes attached to them. There's an entire pipe piano kind of thing you can play over there. It's actually really cool, and at night the whole thing's super quiet. The playground is also the only thing on our entire trip that has the coveted Jane's seal of approval. You having a good time? And this is GameWorks, a retro-style arcade right next to the convention center where you can play a bunch of old-style arcade games and win carnival tickets. So if you're coming into town to walk away with a giant plushy snake, this is the place to do it.
When you're in Seattle, one of my favorite restaurants to go to is called Wild Ginger. It's not that far from the venue. Get the 7-flavor beef. You're welcome.
This is the Washington State Convention Center, which you'll be pleased to know is right in the middle of the city, which means there's tons of food, hotels, and things to do around here. And it's easy to find because of this giant archway. If you're flying into Seattle-Tacoma, or SeaTac as the locals call it, the best way to get to downtown Seattle is with the Light Link rail straight from the airport. Be it for Standard or for Legacy, we can't wait to see you at GP Seattle.
Yeah, we can't wait to see you at GP Seattle. It's going to be a tremendous weekend of gaming. Legacy on days 1 and 2, and then the second day of the Standard GP on the Sunday. You'll be there, BDM, won't you?
I will be.
Looking forward to that. And we've got some more Magic to show you. So let's take a look at the deck of Chris Botelho and JVL. Why don't you walk us through what is Abzan Hour?
So the goal of this deck is to cast Hour of Promise. You make 2 zombies if you put enough deserts into play, and then you'll usually have 10 permanents in play once you do that, and that'll allow you to start gaining incremental advantage with Arc of Orazca. In the later turns of the game, you start casting Approach of the Second Sun. You can usually do it 2 turns in a row because of the amount of scrying you're doing, and then you just win the game. In the middle of that, you're interacting with your opponent with cards like Fatal Push, and then big spells like Fumigate and Settle the Wreckage. And these are particularly strong right now in Standard because so many of the players who showed up this weekend thought to themselves, every single control deck's just killing my creatures with 1 card at a time. Fumigate and Settle the Wreckage, they kill tons of creatures all at once.
Also, a card like Mastermind's Acquisition is lurking there at the end of the pile. That's a really interesting card that lets him get some sweet cards out of his sideboard. Also lets him tutor for a Approach the Second Sun from his main deck, but he has some cool cards in his sideboard that he can get, including Profane Procession, which is a bane of every sealed deck player in the Rivals of Ixalan format, but also doing some work here in Standard this weekend.
All right, fantastic stuff. So that's the deck we're going to focus on. He does have an opponent, shockingly enough. His name is Hal Brady. Why don't we see how Abzan Hour gets on here on Good Morning Magic. Here we go.
All right, welcome back to Time Walk coverage of Round 9 here at Grand Prix Memphis. Brian David Marshall with Jake Van Lunen and Rich Hagon. And on your right is Chris Botelho playing Obs on Hour. It looks like he's going to be up against one of these white-black vampire decks or one of these Obs on token decks or one of these. We've seen a lot of Legions landing here. This is a treasure map for Chris Botelho. This is one of the cards he really has loved. It gives him yet another way to ramp while scrying through his deck.
Yeah, it's also just a great card advantage engine in the later stages of the game. Just a really powerful spell in a deck like Chris's.
You get to start cashing your random treasures in for cards.
Yeah. Hal Brady is actually playing one of the more traditional white-black token decks. The decks we kind of saw the first week of this new standard format. Oh my goodness, now that's a card we don't see in main decks very often.
Wow, main deck Arguel's Bloodfast, but I guess if you're going to play a lot of lifelinking creatures, you can actually really exploit that.
I imagine we're going to see that card.
A second treasure map for Chris Botelho. Just biding his time.
And this is great for Chris. He's not under a lot of pressure. His opponent is not playing blue counter spells. Chris can be pretty confident at this point that it will not be that difficult for him to get to 7 mana and start casting Approach of the Second Sun.
1 black, pay 2 life, draw a card. It's not Necropotence, is it?
It's greed.
Right.
It's actually just greed. And when it transforms, how often have you seen that card transform and do something meaningful? I've really only ever seen it front-sided. I don't know if I've seen a transformed Arguel's Bloodfast yet.
When people have transformed it against me, it has been used for Scarab God plus activation as a mana source, and that's pretty good.
Yeah. Gift of Paradise, more ramp here from Chris Botelho. Gains a little life, too. Gets back up over 21 and has 2 mana to activate both of his treasure maps this turn. Keep on scrying.
Someone in chat with the handle A Beckstrom. I actually know someone who would be.
He's actually the designer of Sam Black's sort of white weenie-ish deck.
He says, this is one of the most lopsided Game 1 matchups you will ever see. But he doesn't say which way.
Yeah, well, I imagine he means in Chris Botelho's favor.
Yeah, with Fumigate, Settle the Wreckage, lots of life gain.
See, I'm going to remember that. That's a good trick, though. Put something like that in chat, and then at the end of the game, somebody wins. You go, see?
You just assume everyone projects and picks whatever side they want to.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, Hal's got this. So easy, so sweet.
It looks like Chris Botelho has Hour of Promise here. So now he's going to be able to put two more lands into play and put 2 zombies into play.
Yeah, and it looks like Chris wouldn't even need to resort to any activations from a card like Ark of Orazca here. He's just going to be able to win the game by casting a pair of Approach of the Second Sun.
He's got 2 in his
next
hand.
turn and the turn after. I'm not sure. I know he has at least 1. He's scryed a lot, though, and he's in no rush to defend himself against a deck like Hal Brady's, so...
So there's Scavenger Grounds, and that's if near dead lands. So yeah, you can gain all the life you want, Hal Brady. It is not going to matter for Chris Botelho if he gets to cast to Approach the Second Suns. Just an alternate win condition, one of the things that's pretty present in Standard, kind of like right below the energy mono red surface of the format.
Yeah, and
up until now.
Something that you'll look at when you see these 2 decks is that both of them are trying to make the game go long. Both of them are decks that play to the long game. You look at Hal Brady's deck, Arguel's Bloodfast, a bunch of life gain. He's planning on playing a very long game, and that does not match up well against an opponent who's casting Approach of the Second Suns, because he's not applying the pressure he needs to end the game before that card is cast, and it really just comes down to what the plan is for both people, and they both have the same plan, but Chris's deck is better at ending the game when both people are trying to do that.
I presume Hal has no way to interact with Approach the Second Sun. At some point, it does just occur. Is that right?
His way of interacting with it is to just generally outrace his opponent.
Have the game
to-
finished first.
Yeah.
Right.
So now he plays a Regal Caracal. Chris Botelho's cats have turned against him. It's the most treacherous breed. He is going to start digging now. He transforms his first treasure map. Gets 3 treasure. Gets the scry. Says, nah. So, I mean, that's crazy. He gets to just go up 3 mana there off of that. 4 mana, really, because you also get the treasure map transforms into a land. There he uses one of his treasure to scry again. Well, there's Arch of Orazca, so now he has the City's Blessing. That means he could pay 5 mana, tap that, draw a card. You're interested in that, right, Rich?
Well, you said draw a card at the end, so I'm interested.
And this is one of the exciting and grindy parts about this deck. It's hard to talk about how exciting, but it is exciting.
No. I'm sorry. You just said in consecutive words, exciting, then you said and then you said grindy. And I'm sorry, you can't put those 2 words on either side of the word and expect not to get called on it.
How about compellingly grindy?
Compellingly grindy, there we are.
When you
That's
cast Hour of Promise, you basically have the City's Blessing right away. And then you can get this Arch of Orazca and start generating card advantage over the long term with it. And to me, that's exciting.
All right, Chris Botelho got a pack of cats attacking him. And he's going to double block the Regal Caracal itself. Trades with one of the zombie tokens. Hal's up to 30, but again, Hal's life can be 1,000,000, and it just won't matter this game if Chris Botelho gets to resolve to approach the Second Sons. Or not even, doesn't even have to resolve them both. I gotta tell you, the kind of magic that I enjoy playing a deck like Hal's. Like, I love the idea. I was like, I'm gonna play some tokens. Every token I play is gonna gain me 2 life because I have 2 anointed priests. Then I'm gonna use Argios Bloodfast. I'm gonna draw a bunch of cards.
I mean, this does sound all awesome, yes.
Yes.
But isn't it the sort of thing you do, like, when you're sitting in a hotel room having just missed your flight on one of those, like, 1 foot wide desks, and you're just playing with your cards?
Or with 40 additional cards to complete and a black-white commander.
Field of Ruin deals with that Arch of Orazca.
Do you have any
Very nice.
idea how happy you've made chat there, Jake, by calling it Arch, finally? you were seriously disturbing some people with that. But it's good to know that anytime you want to do that, just leave the H off. That'll always do it.
All right, there's a duress from Hal Brady. He's like, do you have an Approach the Second Son? He's like, of course. No, I do not. I have this Fumigate, though, and I have this Fatal Push. So maybe Hal has turned the tide here a little bit. He gets to take that Fumigate away. He's going to keep drawing cards. There's a hidden stockpile.
He's making guys. I still would believe that Chris Botelho is, a favorite here, but Hal is definitely mounting an offense that Chris has to be scared of.
With his 13 remaining Wrath of God effects.
Yes.
Well, if with all the extra cards and scrying Chris is going to be doing, he doesn't
find
anything,
of those.
then things have definitely. I mean, Hal is able to at least make this much more of a game than it looked like. I mean, I think we assumed maybe that Fumigate was
to end.
Yeah, an approach, but it wasn't. And so here's another Gift of Paradise, another 3 life for Chris Botelho. So just sort of forestalling Hal's plan. And now he's going to use a treasure to draw a card.
And every one of these
With
draws
Treasure
has
Cove.
been
Yeah, just
a
gets to draw
gift
2
or
cards.
a land.
Look at this. Just Treasure Cove, just drawing cards. He's got another gift. Well, I mean, you play it, right?
I guess so.
Question in chat. Android Ater asks, "What's the hour for in Abzan Hour mean?"
That's Hour of Promise. That's a 5-mana spell. It lets you search your deck for 2 lands, put them into play, and then if you control 3 or more deserts, put 2 zombie tokens into play. It's a pretty sweet card.
I'm really hoping
it's something that he can do on turn 4 even in this deck.
Oh, yeah, with Gift of Paradise, it can be ramped into. What I'm really hoping happens here is that Chris finds Mastermind's Acquisition before he finds
Oh, me too.
Approach
oh
of the
my
Second
gosh.
Sun. Because the things that can happen out of his sideboard, he has a lot of mana here.
I want to see Zakama Primal Calamity.
Really?
Yes.
Did I miss that on the sheet?
It's in his sideboard.
Oh, okay.
So he can Mastermind's Acquisition for it, play it, untap 9 lands when it comes into play, and then proceed to shoot things,
Yeah,
gain life.
it's a ritual here with all those Gift of Paradises, too.
All right, so there is Anointed Procession for Hal Brady. So now every time, this is essentially a doubling season type effect. So every time he would make a token, he makes double that amount of tokens instead. And it's, if you get multiple Anointed Processions, it's geometric.
Yeah.
So instead of 1 token, you'd get 4 tokens. But right now, at this point, he just gets 2. Gains 4 life, because he's got those 2 Anointed Priests. Did he just draw Mastermind's Acquisition?
He did!
These two are quite seriously excited beside me, I've got to tell you.
I can't imagine that Zakama is the correct play here.
I know, but that's okay. Whatever it is going to be exciting.
All right, so he is tapping mana for... And he's probably just going to go get a... No, he's going to the sideboard. He's not. He could just go get an Approach the Second Sun from his deck.
He did it.
He got Zakama.
I believe he did. 6,
He just said
7,
red
8.
mana to his opponent. His
9.
opponent's like, what is happening?
Here we go.
We are. This is the best thing that's ever happened.
Yes!
Woo! All is
Untap
right with
9
the
lands.
world.
Never let it be said, chat, that we're not also fans of the game Magic the Gathering. That was worth getting up for. Good morning, Magic strikes again.
I didn't need that coffee, as it turns out.
Boom, boom, shake, shake the room.
So now you may be wondering what abilities.
I am actually wondering what abilities.
So Zakama has red and 2. Zakama deals 3 damage to target creature. It has green and 2, destroy target artifact or enchantment, of which Hal Brady has a couple. Or white and 2, you gain 3 life. By the way, Chris can do all of those things repeatedly each turn.
Yes.
He can
In
actually...
case we hadn't noticed.
It's like, I will destroy your Anointed Procession and your hidden stockpile. I will kill your Anointed Priest. And
So between us, off air, right? This is on Time Walk, so we could play it back a little slower so we can get to enjoy it longer. What do you think?
Oh, by the way, on top of everything else, Zakama's a 9/9 Vigilance Reach Trample.
Oh, okay, good.
It's got a body.
But the thing is, let's not forget, this is one of the most lopsided matchups imaginable in Game 1, and Hal Brady's all the way up on 31. He's like almost double Chris Botelho right now.
Hal Brady does have an answer here, unfortunately, for all of us.
No!
Start finish, looks like.
In his deck or in hand?
It looks like it's in his hand.
Okay.
Oh.
We're sorry about favoritism. It's just Zakama Primal Calamity. That's going to make you the crowd favorite.
Well, the thing is, if Zakama Primal Calamity like knocked on your door and said, "Whose side are you on?" you'd say, "Yours, mister."
I would. That's correct.
All right. So it looks like something's getting targeted by Zakama. I'm assuming, yep, it was his hidden stockpile. He scried away one of his tokens. But Spectral Procession next to fall here, I would imagine. There's Legion's Landing. Are you going to let him get 2 tokens? No, I am not.
Yeah, just to confirm, I know some of you in chat are getting a trifle confused. Well, I know that feeling. Yes, when Sakama enters the battlefield, if you cast it, untap all lands you control.
Oh,
it's
sorry.
not just 9; it's all 9, all of them, and that's what he did. He untapped.
Sorry,
11.
my bad. Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm imagining this might have been your first time to see Sakama Primal Calamity cast off a Mastermind's acquisition.
So both priests go down. Untap, yeah, all lands. Jeez.
I'm starting to not get how Hal's going to win this so easily because it feels like he's a little behind.
So in comes Akama. In comes the zombie token. And Chris has the machine gun. How much red can he make?
3. Oh, 4, 5. Yeah, he has the 2 flipped maps and then 3 gifts.
So there's start to finish.
Quite a lot of comments in chat, Jake, about trying to understand why Hal Brady hasn't conceded. Now, they are only a third of the way through their round at this point, but would you have conceded a little while ago if you were Hal?
For the sake of time, perhaps. I mean, sometimes the white-black token deck does take some time to win some games, but you're in day 2 of a Grand Prix. Anything can happen. We saw for a number of turns there, Chris was just drawing lands in Gifts of Paradise. If Hal can get this Sakama the Primal Calamity off the table, and it looks like he's going to be able to, then, he could have Chris draw lands for a number of turns in a row, and it is perhaps conceivable that he can come back. It is extraordinarily unlikely, but it is possible with an asterisk.
So Zakama dies, but takes a lot of the room out with it. Kills the Legion's Landing, kills the token, does some damage to Hal.
There is basically nothing left of any significance on this battlefield.
There is a zombie.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh, it looks like we may have found the more traditional win victory here for Chris Botelho. I believe.
Is he going to try a different
I believe
approach?
the sun is approaching. Yes.
Okay.
He's also got a spring to mind here. All right, we'll cast this instead. Okay, and that is going to be enough for Hal Brady to scoop it up. He knows that a few more turns from now, Chris Botelho will have a second sun, and that'll win him the game. And now Hal Brady will scoop. Once Chris has demonstrated the inevitability, and again, he doesn't even know that Chris is playing necessarily Approach the Second Sun.
Sure.
And it's hard for Hal Brady here because his deck has all these pieces, all these like puzzle pieces that kind of need to go together in order for his deck to do what it wants to do. And at the same time, against a deck like Chris Botelho's, he's going to need to sideboard in a lot of disruption. And there we see some of that disruption. That's going to make it harder for him to put together the puzzle pieces that he wants to in order to enact his own plan.
So Hal opened up with a turn 2 hidden stockpile. Now turn 3, casting this duress. What do you take? You're going to just take that Settle the Wreckage, I assume. Although there's an Immortal Sun in hand.
There is an Immortal Sun. That's a kind of exciting card, too. I mean, this is a 6-mana card.
By the way, that card is not very far away from being cast with Gift of Paradise in hand.
Yeah, and there's a Spring to Mind, too, so there's no ramp option. Hal's going to take the payoff card here, if you will.
I can tell you that pairings are up for our next round, so we are going to blister our way through game number 2 just to get you a sense of what's going on here. So watch along with us at double speed.
Chris casts Spring to Mind there to ramp. And not a very high velocity draw here for Hal Brady, though.
He's getting a servo. He has that revolt trigger.
Get to revolt right off of an Evolving Wilds. So this will be Gift of Paradise.
Ka-ching, up we go. More life, hooray.
And now Hal can keep that token. Oh, well, there's an Anointed Procession. And Chris Botelho cycles Beneath the Sands. Here is... This should be Hour of Promise. Yep. Man, I want an Hour of Promise Anointed Procession deck. Get 4 zombies.
Scavenger ground there. Thank you, ZX Lepelin, saying the stream looks great. Appreciate that. We try.
Yeah, and there you see, Chris did not have the requisite number of deserts he needed in order to make 2
because
zombies.
he went for the Arch instead.
Yeah, he decided to get Arch of Arauska instead.
Well, here's another Duress. Gonna take the Settle the Wreckage. Just 2 lands in hand for Chris Botelho. But he now has the City's Blessing, and now we'll draw 2 cards a turn. And another Gift of Paradise. And now he can start working the Arch.
And this is one of the really nice angles of his deck.
Huge draw here for Hal. Brady finds a Regal Caracal and 4 cats. Please spay and neuter your pets, people.
Yes.
Oh, but a Fumigate off the top.
Bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Gains Chris a bunch of life. And he's got a treasure map.
When you cast a Wrath Effect against just a random player that you don't know, do you wave at all their creatures as they leave the battlefield? I always do. I cast Wrath of God and I go, bye-bye, everybody.
I like when my opponents
I usually just like...
Oh, you do the
I use my Wrath of God
hands?
like as a spatula.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. The Wrath of
Scoop
God, the
them
card
up.
itself, you kind of use it as a trowel, and you just...
All right, well, Regal Caracal has returned.
Just to mark your card, the matches coming your way in the next round are Sam Birkenbiel at 7-2 against Ziri Zhu at 7-2 with Blue-Red Artificers. That's our main match. And then our second fun deck to show you is Asa Snyder with Mastermind Ramp.
I love that deck. It looks has a lot of similarities to Chris Botelho's deck, but it is not an Approach the Second Sun deck. It is very much a Mastermind's Acquisition deck.
And by the way, if we get through both of those, we might even be able to show you a little bit of Corey Baumeister at 9-0. Because, you know, he's 9-0 because he's at the tournament. So, of course, he's 9-0.
Treasure Map, another card that's very, very good at getting you to City's Blessing quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Oh, look at this. And Chris just keeps drawing cards. And now he's got to settle the wreckage.
So, look, I don't think we're going to get through the rest of this. It seems like there's quite a long way to go.
I can tell you Chris does win this 2-0. He is.
Okay. Let's get out of here. Sorry about that, boys and girls, but the tournament won't wait for us. It is commercial break time. And when we come back, it'll be live action in round 10.